Hi, it's Steph, and we're at the Home Depot. And it's a new month, which means new, fresh inventory. There are beautiful new perennials and shrubs, as well as plenty of colorful annuals. So let's go ahead and take a look at the early May inventory at the Home Depot. We're going to start off with this beautiful perennial that has really stolen my heart in the last few seasons. It is known as Nymphophea, or red hot poker. Now, despite the name, they're not always red, but they do come in hot colors, like this really pretty yellow that you see here, and some orange, as well as coral. I even have a lime green variety in my garden called Lady Luck that is really pretty. Now, these get to be pretty tall, 36 to 48 inches in height. This is a perennial for full sun, and this variety is called Poco Brittle Brickle. And it is hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. They're pretty drought tolerant once established, and they bloom late summer through fall. But even when they're not in bloom, you have this grassy foliage that makes it look like an ornamental grass in your perennial borders. You can see this one is pushing out a bunch of new bloom buds, and it's going to look like this pretty soon. And all of these tubular petals, the pollinators, especially the hummingbirds, absolutely love to get their beak up in there. But these are really interesting. They provide a lot of vertical interest. This orange variety is so pretty. The tips almost appear to be like a fuchsia with a hint of purple. Really cool. And this one is called the Red Hot Poker Poco Orange, and it has similar specs, 36 to 48 inches in height, hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and blooms late summer through fall. And a perennial that I also have in my garden that I get lots of questions on, it is Geum, also known as Avens. It's a frilly little bloom that looks like a rosette. The variety that I have is called Mai Tai, which is more of a peach color, but this one here is more of an orange shade, and it is beautiful. It's called Blazing Sunset Geum. It gets to be 9 to 12 inches in height. It needs 12 to 18 inch spacing, water when dry, and very hardy, down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Blooms late spring through midsummer. Here in my zone 6B, 7A, my Geum, also known as Avens, will bloom in May, and it is such a gorgeous spring flower. But even when it doesn't have these tall stems of blooms, the foliage is also really pretty. So it has these large green leaves. It almost looks like a lady's mantle or like a heuchera. So even the foliage is really attractive, but this is a really great perennial. And if you love Dipladenia and Mandevilla like I do, the Home Depot has a special buy on their Rio planters. The quart size is 3 for $15, normally $6.98 a piece. And they have them in their traditional pink with the yellow throat. They also have them in the white and some red varieties. Now, these are a little cold, so they're not all opened up yet, but you can see that they're full of buds, and these are such a great annual. They're tropical. They will bloom their heads off from late spring all the way through fall. They are drought tolerant, so you can sometimes even go a day between waterings, and they love that hot sun. Now, there is a difference between the Dipladenia and the Mandevilla. The Dipladenia is more of a bushy variety, where the Mandevilla is more of a climbing or trailing variety. So those are the key differences between the two of them. But this is a must-have annual for me that I love to grow every year. Another excellent perennial that I feel like every garden should have is Lady's Mantle. Now, this one is not in bloom yet, but it's a perfect opportunity for you to be able to see how beautiful the foliage is. Now, Lady's Mantle has this gorgeous foliage that holds on to water droplets so beautifully. Look at that. They look like little beads of glass. And in about June, in my 6B, 7A garden, they'll send up these sprays of these limey green chartreuse flowers that look like baby's breath, and they're just really ethereal and billowy and look beautiful atop this foliage. Now, I have a variety called Thriller in my garden, but this one is just listed as Lady's Mantle. It's also known as Alchemilla mollis. It is a perennial for part sun. It is deer resistant. I can vouch for that. The deer do not touch it in my garden. Has a clumping habit, and it is easy to grow, and it is very hardy, down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And it gets to be 15 to 18 inches in height and needs 18 to 24 inch spacing. This is also a perennial that takes really well to dividing. So most perennials at about the 3-year mark, they are large enough for you to be able to divide and to spread them around your garden. It's a great affordable way to grow your garden, but also it rejuvenates the health of the plant. It keeps the foliage nice and healthy. It keeps it blooming really well. So it's always a good idea to do. And these are in the Home Depot brand container for $9.98. And if you want a stunning red foliage perennial that really pops against all of the other green in the garden, this is a good one. This is penstemon, and it's a pollinator magnet. It gets these little bell-shaped blooms. Let me show you right here, that the pollinators absolutely love. They come in shades of white, purples, and pinks. But what's really great about this variety is this beautiful red foliage. This is the Dark Towers penstemon, also known as beard tongue. And it's in the Home Depot colored containers, which are 2 gallons for $14.98. It is a perennial for full sun, and it gets to be pretty tall at 32 to 36 inches in height. Needs 30-inch spacing, water when dry, and very hardy, down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And this variety blooms midsummer. I find that mine in my Zone 6B 7A blooms around June, and it blooms alongside my roses, and it just looks gorgeous. I absolutely love it. And if you want to grow hydrangeas but you only have full sun, the panicle hydrangea is a great option for you. And this variety I have in my own garden, and it's great. It's the Little Lime Panicle Hydrangea by Proven Winners. Now, the Limelight is the traditional one that this one was bred after, but the Limelight gets pretty large at 6 to 8 feet tall and wide, where the Little Lime stays more compact at 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. These can take a good deal of sun. In fact, mine are planted in full sun, so long as they get adequate water, and they are hardy in zones 3 through 8 or down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. They're a petite shrub for full sun, part shade, and it goes all the way from summer. So at some point in June, it will start bloom. First, they look a bit lime, the color, in green. Then they will go cream, and as the summer cools off and gets later, probably into August here in my zone, they will start turning shades of pink before going all different shades of like mauve and antique pinks in the fall. It's just a stunning shrub that gives you a really long season of interest. So currently it is just green, but any day now it'll start pushing out its bloom clusters, and it'll go nonstop, like I said, for months. And these are in a number 2 container for $29.98. And a beautiful pink salvia. Now, when you think of salvia, you most often see them in the traditional purple shades like you see there. They also come in shades of white, but this one is a really beautiful and vibrant pink, and it contrasts so nicely with so many perennials in the garden. I am still looking for a spot to add some in my own garden because I really like the pink salvias. Now, salvias are an excellent perennial. This one is in a Home Depot brand container, a number 1 size container for $8.98. There isn't a tag that indicates the variety. It does look very much like the Pink Profusion by Proven Winners, but this one is a Home Depot brand. Now, salvia all wants to be grown in the same way. It likes full sun. It can take a lot of heat. It is really drought tolerant, which means it wants a very well draining soil, and it's also pest resistant. Not much bothers it. Deer don't touch it. Rabbit don't touch it. It's an excellent perennial. It does not need fertilizing. In fact, if you give it fertilizer, it might flop in the center and not perform as well. So these are just tough as nails perennials that will be great in any full sun garden. Salvia also takes really well to deadheading. So these are still in pretty good shape, but once the whole bloom is dried up and done, you can follow that stem down to the bottom, cut it off, and there will be no shortage of secondary blooms getting ready to go on this plant. It's also a pollinator magnet. Bees love salvia. And a gorgeous perennial that performs more like a shrub, Baptisia, also known as false indigo. Now, more often than not, you will find these in shades of blue, and even yellow has become really popular. But look at this stunning variety. It almost has like this mauve coloration with a little bit of yellow inside once it starts to open. Really pretty. And what's great about this is that this perennial gets so large that it's kind of like a specimen or standalone perennial. You don't need multiples for them to look good, like you typically do with smaller perennials, right? You want to plant them in groups of 3 or 5, etc. This one, you need 1 false indigo. And even when they're done blooming, you have this really beautiful foliage that leans a little bit to have a hint of blue in them. Really pretty. Great filler for cut flower arrangements. So all summer long, I cut on my Baptisia to use it as fillers in bouquets that I create with my zinnias or dahlias, etc. Now, the shame is that there is no name on this. It just is called false indigo. So we don't know what variety this pretty mauvey yellow color is. But it is a full sun plant. It does get to be probably 24 to 36 inches in height, and the similar width, 24 to 36, I would say. And water when dry, hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and it blooms early to midsummer. I would say this is more of a mid to late spring blooming plant, maybe even through early summer. But this is a gorgeous variety. They look also similar to lupin in the style in which the blooms shoot up and how they bloom. If you like a butterfly bush, but you don't have the space for a really large one, here's a good option. This is the Pugster by Proven Winners, and it is a dwarf or more compact version of a butterfly bush. Now, they come in Pugster Periwinkle, which is this light purple. They also come in Pugster Blue, which is a deeper indigo blue, and I've even seen them in white. And they're very compact. It says here that they get to be 2 feet tall and wide, but I find in my experience that they get closer to the 3 by 3 tall and wide. They're hardy in zones 5 through 9 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're long blooming. Now, butterfly bushes in my zone, they're late to emerge. So they are a woody shrub, and you'll think that it's dead, and then all of a sudden you'll see it start pushing out some new foliage along the stems. So they break dormancy late in spring, but they go for a really long time, all the way through your first hard frost in fall. So that's late October for me here in my zone. Now, you can also keep it blooming profusely throughout the whole summer by any time that the blooms start looking dead and browned, go through, clean it up and deadhead it, and it will keep pushing out more blooms. I also find them to be very fragrant. In my opinion, these butterfly bush blooms smell very much like lilacs, and you can see they get some really large, beautiful blooms that the pollinators absolutely love. And one last thing about butterfly bushes is that they do want to be grown in a very well-draining soil that leans dry in full sun. If they get too much moisture, they will die and they won't return to you in your garden. So that's really important to know about growing butterfly bushes. And these are in a Proven Winners #2 container for $29.98. Here's another penstemon or beard tongue. This one has a really beautiful, vibrant pink. You can see that bell-shaped bloom that the pollinators love. Has a dark stem and green foliage on this one, which is a contrast to that dark towers that we saw that had red foliage. This one is called the Mission Bells Deep Rose. Also gets to be 20 to 24 inches in height, 18 to 20 inch spacing, hardy to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and blooms early summer through fall. We just saw the Mission Bells penstemon in their 2-gallon container for $14.98, but they also have them here in their smaller Vigoro containers for $10.98. So if you wanted to try one that was a little bit smaller at a little bit less of a price point, here you go. But you could also divide those larger ones into 2 plants if you wanted to once you got home. Just keep those divisions well watered until they start establishing some roots. And a quintessential cottage garden perennial, the Shasta Daisy. I absolutely love them. They're such cheery little flowers. And this variety does appear to be a little bit shorter in stature, but it probably is just a regular 24 to 36 inch height. Yes, they do shoot up and get taller as the season goes on and they're getting ready to bloom. So this is the Western Star Taurus Shasta Daisy. It says it's an upright perennial, gets to be 36 inches in height, needs 24 inch spacing, water when dry, and hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Blooms early summer through fall. Now, I find that daisies are really good self-seeders. So if you want to spread them around your garden and get more of them, not only does the clump get larger every year, but you can let a couple of these bloom heads just dry on the plant. They will drop seed, and then you'll get a bunch more daisy babies that you can either share with friends or spread around your garden. But they're a really beautiful classic garden flower. $10.98 for these, again, full sun. And here they have the 2-gallon version of the Western Star Taurus Shasta Daisy for $14.98. And they are a little bit larger. So again, you could take these home, divide them right down the center, and get 2 for 1 right out of the container. I do that all the time. It's a great way to stretch your gardening budget. Tons of buds on these as well. Some blue fescue. Now this is a really great option. Say you have like a rock garden, you can add a lot of blue color and interest with these short growing grassy type perennials. They also look really great paired with things like sedums. As you can see, they're actually side by side here at the store. This sedum variety is an excellent one. It's one that I have in my own garden. It's the Angelina Stonecrop sedum. It's a great ground cover sedum, and even in the winter, this is evergreen, so even in the winter it will get a really pretty bronzy color before going really bright yellow and chartreuse, kind of like a lime green in the warmer months of late spring through summer. And it's super easy to spread. If one of these branches break off, just shove it in the soil, it'll start to root and you'll get another plant. In fact, all sedums work that way. But here is the information on the Angelina Stonecrop sedum. It likes full sun. It is a perennial. It is low growing. So in height, it doesn't get much taller than say 2 to 3 inches in height, but it does spread quite wide. And it is hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Blooms early to late summer. It will at some point get these tiny little flowers on the tips, but really you just grow it for this really pretty foliage. Here's the specs on the blue fescue Elijah Blue. It does like full sun. It is a perennial grass. $10.98 for these containers. They are deer resistant and drought tolerant. They have a clumping habit. While they are deer resistant, I don't know that they're necessarily bunny resistant, because I did have one in my garden for a little while and I do think that the bunnies might have gone after it. So something to be aware of. It blooms early to midsummer. It gets to be 8 inches in height, needs 18-inch spacing, and hardy down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And this really pretty dark foliage sedum is a Stonecrop sedum Sunsparkler Dazzleberry. It's also low growing and clumping, gets to be 6 to 8 inches in height, and water when dry, hardy to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And we'll get these little pink clusters of blooms on the edges in late summer through fall. And yet one more pretty sedum. This one is called Frosted Fire Stonecrop. That is really interesting. It's like a variegated yellow and green variety. And let's see how tall it gets. The habit varies, the height varies. Water when dry, all sedums again, like a well-draining soil that leans dry and in full sun. Blooms early to late summer. This would look really pretty in like a low-growing terracotta bowl type planter with a collection of other sedums. I especially like them with things like hens and chicks. Those look really great in those types of arrangements. Super low maintenance. If you want to do an outside container that you don't have to worry about watering, these need very little water to look good and get by. And if you like a tropical vibe for your outdoor patio containers for the summertime, they have some really pretty elephant ears by Proven Winners. Now, I actually grew this one a couple of seasons ago. It is gorgeous. It almost has like an iridescent look to the foliage. It is called the Emerald Isle Alocasia. It gets to be 30 to 36 inches in height, 36 to 48 inches in width, and these are 2-quart containers for $15.98. So for an annual, they're a little bit on the higher side. There are some people who are able to overwinter these corms and save them for next year. Let me know if that's something that you've tried before, but these are really pretty. They also have this one in a green shade that has sort of a ruffly edge to it. And let's see what this one is called. That is also labeled as Emerald Isle, which I don't think that is the case. So these might be mislabeled. That happens sometimes by the growers who grow these, but it is a real pretty one. $15.98 again for this variety, and you can see that it has another leaf coming out there. Now here in my zone, it's still a little bit chilly for these to go out, but I am going to pick one up because I don't know if it'll be here the next time I come in, and I'm going to use it for one of my centerpieces in one of my summer containers. Another annual that I've used a ton over the years, Cordyline. This is the red spike. It looks really great in the center of a container. I've used it alongside things like the Dipladenia planted along the bottom, and it looks really great. So 1 quart, $7.98 at the Home Depot. And some colorful warm weather annuals. These are New Guinea impatiens, which are, I think, a little bit prettier than the traditional impatiens because they have a larger flower. They're also a really tough as nails annual plant. They have really thick stems, similar to the stems that you see on begonias and even coleus, which means they hold on to a little bit of moisture, which will certainly help them do really well through those really hot dog days of summer, right? So pretty. This is a gorgeous hot pink color. They also have this really soft pink color. They also come in shades of purple and white. This variety gets to be 8 to 12 inches in height, 4 to 6 inches in width, water when dry, and it has a mounded habit. And these New Guinea impatiens in the Vigoro quart-size container are $4.98 each. Look at this gorgeous one. It's like a fuchsia with like a red stripe and dark foliage. Really pretty. And my Home Depot is about to put out their pre-made summer containers with sun patiens. They have a thriller in the center, which is this spiky accent, and several colors of sun patiens, and this really pretty fuchsia and this light orchid purple. Really beautiful. And this is going to continue to fill out as the season goes on. You may not even see that there is a planter underneath. And $29.98 is not a bad price if you add up how many plants you get in here, plus you're getting a decorative planter. All you have to do is water it and enjoy it. And some 12-inch hanging baskets for $29.98, and you're getting some petunias, both the large variety as well as the calibrachoa or smaller varieties, and some of this trailing verbena. This is a really pretty combination with some pinks and a little bit of the light pink with the purple throat that picks up on this burgundy purple color of the verbena. Really pretty. And some of the Proven Winners quart-size containers. The last time we were here at the Home Depot, we checked out the osteospermum. They had the Bright Lights purple, as well as this variety here, which is the Bright Lights Horizon Sunset, that has a bit more of that orange and purple coloration. Well, they have even more this week, starting with some sweet potato vine. And they have a couple of varieties. So this is the Proven Accents Sweet Caroline Raven, which is a really pretty dark variety. And then they also have this spotted one, which is a new variety. This one is called the Sweet Caroline Sweetheart Shadow Storm. So if you want to look for it at your local garden centers or nurseries this season, I don't think you'll be disappointed. It's a really pretty and interesting variety of sweet potato vine. And all of the sweet potato vines in the quart-size container are $5.98. And they also have some more of the Proven Winners plants here. This one is the Supertunia Blue Veined. It's very pretty. Look at that. It's white with a purple throat. They also have this saffron finch variety that we saw over at Lowe's last week. There it is, Supertunia Saffron Finch. And the Supertunias get quite large throughout the course of a season. If you have up to a 12-inch container, one of these fertilized weekly or every other week should be sufficient for that size container. But anything bigger than, say, a 16-inch, you probably need 2 to 3 plants to really fill it out, but really pretty. And then this one here, it doesn't quite look like the bubblegum, but it might be. It's the Bermuda Beach. I could tell that it was a little bit more coral in appearance than the bubblegum, which is a bit more pink. But look how pretty that is. Isn't that gorgeous? So pretty, and would especially look pretty with this saffron finch with something like a purple verbena. So pretty. I love to combine plants. It's such a great way to be creative when you're gardening. So $5.98 for this, the Supertunia Bermuda Beach. And it gets to be 12 to 24 inches in width and 4 to 12 inches in height. And all petunias are going to want a good amount of sun, so a full sun annual. Look at this. My store is actually having a sale on the Proven Winners. The quart-size containers, 3 for $12. That's $4 a piece, which is amazing and kind of unheard of in our area. The least I've ever paid for a Proven Winners quart-size container in my area is $5.50. And that's if we get 10 or more at my local mom and pop nursery, which I always thought was a great deal. So if you can find this sale at your Home Depot, probably a good time to stock up on some plants to do your annual containers. But throughout the season, petunias can sometimes get a little bit leggy, and if that happens, all you have to do is give them a good haircut down to the level of the top of the planter. They will reflush out with a bushier plant and way more blooms for you to enjoy for the remainder of the season. But they have lots of pretty varieties here. Look at this one here. It's like a fuchsia with a white striping. What's this one called? That is the Supertunia Raspberry Rush. And then there's also this one here that has a little bit of a striping effect. I think it's called Lovey Dovey is what we saw. Is that it? Yeah, Supertunia Lovey Dovey. And this one here, which I always admire every season, and I haven't grown it yet, the Super Bell's Lemon Slice. It's like a striped white and yellow effect. Some verbena, which is a beautiful trailer in a container. This one is the Superbena Sparkling Rose. The Sparkling Amethyst is more of a purple coloration, where the Sparkling Rose has varying shades of pink. Really pretty. This one also responds really well to a good haircut later in the season when it starts to get a little leggy, but it's a really prolific bloomer. And some gorgeous tuberous begonias in some really pretty colors. A light rose pink, this really pretty creamsicle orange, and even a buttery yellow. These are really beautiful. I haven't had the best luck in growing them. I'm not sure why, but I have tried in the past because I really admire how pretty they are. I do think that they can deal with less moisture, so maybe I killed them with kindness and gave them too much water. You can always tell plants that hold on to water by how thick the stems are. So these are very similar to things like coleus that don't need a ton of water, right? You want to stick your finger in the soil, and once it's dry, that's when it's a cue to you to go in and water them some more. But look at this gorgeous orange, and they have so many ruffly petals. They look like little rosettes. The color is getting a little blown out on camera, but it's really like a soft salmon pink, maybe like a coral, really pretty. And some lavender, smells amazing, and the pollinators love it. This one is an English lavender, and the great thing about English lavenders is that while lavender does prefer a very well-draining soil in full sun, this one can handle a tiny bit more moisture. Now, lavender still wants a well-draining soil, but because English lavender, in England, it rains a lot, it's a little bit more tolerant to some wet conditions than, say, something like a Spanish lavender or some that are Mediterranean, which really like it dry and sunny. So it likes full sun, $10.98 for this Figaro container. It is a perennial. It has a shrubby growth habit, and it grows 12 to 24 inches in height, needs 18-inch spacing, water when dry, and hardy down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Blooms early to late summer. Another excellent foliage plant that is low growing and makes a great ground cover. It is dead nettle, also known as lamium. And this variety is called Orchid Frost. So not only does it have this really pretty silvery foliage, it will also send up these bloom stalks, and you'll get these little pink flowers. Sometimes they're pink, sometimes they're purple. They are really pretty, and they light up a shady spot. I have some trees in a woodland area underlined with some of these, and they look really pretty. I do find that the bunnies sometimes do chew on them, so that is something to be aware of, but they do recover pretty well and then push out a bunch of new foliage. These also work really well as a container plant. And right beside it, we have some columbine. Now, columbine is an excellent part-sun perennial for spring. You can see that even the foliage is really pretty, and then it sends up these gorgeous and unique blooms that the pollinators love. This one looks like it's going to be a light purple with a hint of yellow. And these are all in the Home Depot brand containers, #1 size for $9.98. This variety of columbine or aquilegia is called Alpine Blue. It does look to be a lower growing variety. They grow in a clump. They are deer resistant. I find that the deer do not touch them in my garden. They are a part sun, part shade plant, maybe about 3 to 4 hours of morning sun per day. They bloom late spring through summer. They get to be 18 inches in height, need 10-inch spacing, and very hardy, down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Another really pretty aquilegia or columbine that you can take a look at. That is what that bloom will look like once it starts opening up. This is the Kirigami deep blue and white version. Deer resistant, great for rock gardens, so that tells you that it is drought tolerant, has a clumping habit, and also hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Late spring through summer blooming. Look at the back of these blooms. They have these spikes on them, just really interesting. And another staple perennial that I feel like every sunny garden should have, Nepeta, also known as catmint. And this is a really popular variety called the Walker's Low. It creates this large mound of lavender purple flowers, and they bloom in early to mid-spring right alongside things like peonies and roses, and they look excellent together. They also have a bit of a minty fragrance. Nothing bothers them. Deer and rabbit stay away from them, and they do like a well-draining soil and full sun in order for them to be pretty upright. If they don't get enough sun and they get too much water, they can sometimes splay in the middle, flop onto the ground, and not look as attractive. It is a perennial. It is deer resistant because deer and rabbits don't like their fragrance, so they stay away from it. And they're also drought tolerant once established. They bloom early spring through summer. They get to be about, I would say that this is wrong. The size on the Walker's Low gets to be, I would say, about 18 inches in height and about 24 up to 30 inches in width. They can get quite large over time. Hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And a new variety of rose that I've never seen here at the Home Depot. It's called Brindabella Roses. time to smell the roses. And this variety is the Brindabella Dawn Sun Story. It looks like a really beautiful kind of peachy colored rose. And let's see how big they get. 36 to 48 inches in height, and it says to space them about 48 inches. It blooms late spring, summer, and fall, and all roses are going to want to be grown the same way in full sun with a very well draining soil. And these are in for one container for $16.98. This is a gorgeous salvia. Look at this shade of indigo blue. It is so vibrant. And this is called Salvia Blue Marvel. It gets to be 10 to 36 inches in height, needs 10 to 24 inch spacing, water when dry, and hardy down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Salvia is super hardy, likes well-draining soil, drought-tolerant, in a full sun location, and deer and rabbit resistant. And this is a real pretty variety. But they also have some of these Proven Winners hanging baskets here at my Home Depot, $39.98. It looks like a 12 to 14 inch container, and they already have the container recipes done for you. So if you are a person who does not like to arrange your own plants, these combinations take the guesswork out of things, and they look really beautiful together. If you're looking for an excellent ornamental grass that stays relatively compact, the Carl Forester is a great option. I actually have several of these in my garden, and I absolutely love them. Calamagratis Carl Forester. It likes full sun. It grows to be 3 to 5 feet in height and only 2 to 3 feet in width. And at some point in mid to late summer, it'll push out their plumes, which are typically blooms on ornamental grasses, and they look like wheat, which transitions them beautifully from late summer through fall. So if you're looking for a compact ornamental grass to add movement and texture in your garden, the Carl Forester is a great option. These are 2-gallon Vigoro containers for $16.98. And my Home Depot also has these drop and decorate containers that you can just take home, place in your container, and you are good to go for the season for $24.98. Now this one here has a bunch of Proven Winners plants, and you can actually see in the tags what's included in them. So there is the Super Bells Honeyberry. There is also it looks like the Supertunia Vista Jazzberry. And then there is one other option here. This is the Super Bells Dreamsicle. This one here looks like it has the petunia that we looked at over on that side, that has the coral color, as well as some Laguna Sky Blue Lobelia, which is an excellent variety, by the way. It did really well for me when I planted it a couple of seasons ago. It also has Super Bells Yellow Chiffon, which will look gorgeous with this blue and this pink color, which is the Supertunia Bermuda Beach. So check out your Home Depot to see if they're offering these drop and decorate containers that fit in a 12-inch planter for $24.98 with Proven Winners selected annuals. This combination here is also gorgeous. Look at that. So you get the Super Bells Yellow Chiffon, the Supertunia Bordeaux, which is an excellent one as well, super vigorous. And you're also getting this one here, which is the Superbena Royal Plum Wine. Such a pretty combination, all in one container, all done for you, which is excellent. You can even use these as inspiration if you wanted to create your own containers, because you know that these colors are going to look really pretty together. They also have the drop and decorate containers filled with some Gerbera daisies and geraniums in shades of yellows and pinks and reds. So lots to choose from. And these are for a 10-inch planter for $19.98. And some 8-inch drop and decorate containers with some really pretty petunias and different shades of verbena. There are even some with what looks to be a bidens or a coreopsis type plant in them. So great price. Even if you have some small planters, you can drop this into your 8-inch planter and you are good to go for the season. Well, that brings us to the end of the early May inventory here at the Home Depot. I hope that you've enjoyed checking out what my store has in stock, and I hope that you can find some of these varieties near you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.